I am Esther, 29 years old, and a wedding photographer from Boston. The irony of capturing hundreds of brides with their proud parents was never lost on me, especially after my own small garden ceremony last year. My parents called it a trivial event for someone at the bottom and chose not to attend. Instead, they vacationed in Hawaii with my sister. When they finally called me a week later, it was only because they needed something. Their words taught me a valuable lesson about family boundaries and self-respect. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe if you value standing up for yourself. Growing up in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Massachusetts, my childhood home looked perfect from the outside. The two-story colonial with its manicured lawn and white picket fence seemed like something from a magazine. But inside those walls, a strict hierarchy existed that shaped my entire upbringing. At the top stood my parents, Harold and Eleanor Wilson, a corporate lawyer and hospital administrator who valued status above all else. Just below them was my older sister Julia, 6 years my senior and the golden child who could do no wrong. And then there was me, the afterthought, the disappointment, the one who never quite measured up. From my earliest memories, I understood my place in the family. When Julia brought home straight, as her report card was proudly displayed on the refrigerator for weeks. When I did the same, my mother would briefly nod and say, "That is expected, not exceptional." When Julia was accepted to medical school, my parents threw an elaborate party with all their friends and colleagues invited. When I graduated with honors in fine arts, they skipped the ceremony because it conflicted with a country club event. "Photography is just a hobby, Esther," my father would say, dismissively whenever I tried to show him my work. "It is not a real career path. You need to think about something practical." Julia followed the exact path my parents had mapped out. Pre-med undergraduate studies medical school at an Ivy League university, and then a prestigious residency program. Now, at 35, she is a successful surgeon married to another doctor with 2 perfect children. They live in a house 3 blocks from my parents and have Sunday dinner with them every week. The perfect dynasty my parents always wanted. My passion for photography emerged during high school. I still remember the moment it clicked for me. Mrs. Lawson, my art teacher, lent me an old Nikon camera for a class project. The first time I looked through that viewfinder, something awakened inside me. I could capture moments, emotions, stories in a single frame. I spent hours in the school darkroom, mesmerized, as images appeared like magic in the developing trays. When I announced I wanted to study photography in college, my parents had their first major intervention with me. "We are not paying for you to waste 4 years learning to take pictures," my father declared, across the dining room table. "Harold," my mother chimed in, "perhaps she could study business with photography as a minor. At least that would give her something to fall back on." They spoke about me as if I was not sitting right there. In the end, we compromised. I would attend the state university on a partial scholarship, double majoring in business and fine arts. They would pay the remaining tuition only if I maintained a 3.5 GPA. I worked harder than I ever had, juggling both majors, while also taking wedding photography gigs on weekends to build my portfolio. My roommate, Olivia, would often find me editing photos at 3 in the morning after finishing business assignments. "You know, most people choose one thing to excel at," she told me once. "You are killing yourself trying to please everyone." She was right, but I was still hoping to earn my parents' approval. That hope faded during my junior year when I won a prestigious regional photography award. The local newspaper ran a feature on me and my work. I excitedly sent the clipping to my parents, thinking finally they would see my talent. My mother called that evening. I saw your little article, she said. It was nice. But did you see that Julia just published her research in the New England Journal of Medicine? We sent you the link last week. I had seen it. I had also sent Julia a congratulatory bouquet, but no one had mentioned my achievement to her, or sent me so much as a text message saying good job. After college, I worked at a marketing firm to please my parents while building my photography business on the side. For 3 years, I saved every penny, lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and worked 7 days a week. When I finally had enough clients and savings to leave my corporate job and pursue photography full-time, my father called it career suicide. You are throwing away a stable income to chase a pipe dream, he said. Do not come crying to us when you fail. But I did not fail. Over the next 7 years, I built a successful wedding and portrait photography business. I specialized in capturing authentic emotional moments rather than stiff-posed shots. My calendar filled up a year in advance, and I eventually hired 2 assistant photographers to help with the demand. I bought my own small condo in the city, created a beautiful portfolio website, and even won several international photography awards. My parents never acknowledged any of it. At family gatherings, my mother would proudly update everyone on Julia's latest accomplishment, but introduce me simply as my younger daughter with no mention of my career. I once overheard her tell her bridge club friend that I was still figuring things out, as if I was an aimless 20-year-old rather than a successful business owner. It was during one of my wedding shoots that I met Noah. He was the best man at a celebration I was photographing, and I noticed him making the nervous groom laugh and relax before the ceremony. During the reception, he helped an elderly guest who had trouble walking and later entertained the children when they became restless. I found myself taking extra photos of him throughout the day, drawn to his natural warmth and kindness. When he approached me as I was packing up my equipment, I felt uncharacteristically nervous. So you are the one who sees everything, he said with a smile. That is my job, I replied. To notice the moments others might miss. Well, I noticed you too, he said, handing me his phone number. In case you ever want to be on the other side of the camera. Noah turned out to be an elementary school teacher who loved his job with the same passion I had for photography. On our first date, he talked about his 4th grade students with such enthusiasm and respect that I knew he was special. He saw potential in everyone and believed in nurturing individual talents rather than forcing children into predetermined paths. The contrast with my parents could not have been more stark. When I finally introduced Noah to my parents 6 months into our relationship, my father barely shook his hand, and my mother made several comments about how teachers were so underpaid. On the drive home, Noah asked why they seemed disappointed in him before they even got to know him. It is not you, I explained. They would react this way to anyone who is not a doctor or lawyer or CEO. That is their loss, he said simply, because they are missing out on knowing a pretty wonderful daughter. That was the moment I knew I wanted to build a life with Noah. He saw me for who I was and valued me unconditionally. In his eyes, I was never at the bottom of anything. As our relationship grew serious, I maintained minimal contact with my parents. Monthly phone calls that lasted 10 minutes at most. Obligatory visits on major holidays. I stopped seeking their approval and focused on building my life with someone who actually supported my dreams. Noah proposed on a crisp autumn morning during a hike to a waterfall we both loved. There was no elaborate setup or photographer hiding in the bushes, just the 2 of us, surrounded by the red and golden leaves of New England fall. He knelt on the damp ground, pulled out a simple but beautiful ring, and asked if I would share my life with him. The moment was perfect precisely because it was authentic, much like the photographs I tried to capture for my clients. I know I am just a teacher, he said, after I said yes, through happy tears. But I promise to support your dreams the way you support mine. You are never just anything, I told him. You are everything I want. We decided on a small garden wedding with 70 guests, a modest budget, and a focus on what truly mattered to us. As a wedding photographer, I had seen too many couples stress over elaborate details while losing sight of the meaning behind the ceremony. Noah and I wanted something intimate and meaningful rather than extravagant. I found a beautiful botanical garden venue that offered ceremony and reception space for a reasonable fee. We selected a simple catering menu of our favorite foods, ordered flowers from a local florist, and asked a friend who was a pastry chef to create our cake as her wedding gift. I called in favors from photographer friends who offered to document our day at a fraction of their usual rates. The invitations were handmade by Noah's artistic sister Laura, simple cream-colored cards with pressed flowers that matched our garden theme. We addressed them during a weekend at home, laughing and drinking wine as we worked through our guest list. "Are you sure only 4 people from your family?" Noah asked, as he noticed the stack for my side was much smaller than his. "My Aunt Karen and Uncle Jack, plus my 2 cousins," I confirmed. "And my parents and Julia's family, although I doubt they will come." "You should still invite them," he said gently. "Give them the chance to surprise you." I knew he was right, but I also knew my parents. Still, I hoped that perhaps my wedding day might be the one occasion when they would put aside their disappointment in my life choices. I called all our friends and extended family first, with the news of our engagement saving the call to my parents for last. My mother answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Hello, Esther. This is not a good time. We are about to leave for a fundraiser." "This will just take a minute, Mom. I wanted to let you know that Noah proposed and we are getting married in June." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order. Have you set a date?" "June 12th, I said, trying to keep the excitement in my voice despite her lukewarm response. "It will be a garden ceremony, small and intimate." "June is a busy month," she replied. "Your father has a conference, and I believe Julia is presenting at a medical symposium around then. Plus, the grandkids have their end-of-year recitals." "It is 6 months away, Mom. I would really love for you all to be there." "We will see what we can do," she said, in a tone that suggested she was already looking for excuses. "Send us the details." The formal invitations went out in January, 6 months before the wedding date, as etiquette suggested. I included a handwritten note in my parents' invitation expressing how much it would mean to have them there. Weeks passed with no RSVP. In March, 3 months before the wedding, I decided to visit my parents' home in person to discuss their attendance. I had not been to the house in almost a year, and nothing had changed. The same formal living room, where children were never allowed to play. The same wall of photos documenting Julia's achievements, with only a single small picture of me from high school graduation. My mother offered me tea in the good china cups reserved for guests rather than family, a subtle reminder of my outsider status. My father joined us sitting in his favorite leather chair with perfect posture as always. "We received your invitation," my mother began, after painful small talk about the weather. "But I am afraid we have a conflict." "What conflict?" I asked. "The date has been set for months." My father cleared his throat. "Your sister's family is visiting that weekend. We have already made plans." "Could they not come the weekend before or after?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is my wedding day." My father's expression hardened. "Esther, let us be frank. Julia is a busy surgeon with important responsibilities and limited vacation time. Her children have numerous activities. They cannot rearrange their entire schedule for what is frankly a trivial event for someone at your— He paused, searching for the right word position. My position, I repeated, feeling as if I had been slapped. What your father means, my mother interjected smoothly, is that while this is important to you, Julia's career obligations must take priority. She saves lives, dear. And I just take pictures, I said flatly. Precisely, my father nodded, missing or ignoring my sarcasm. Your sister has built something meaningful. She cannot be expected to disrupt that for this. This is my wedding day, I repeated, my voice breaking slightly. I am your daughter, too. Of course you are, my mother said with a tight smile. But your little garden ceremony is hardly the event of the century. Perhaps, if you had chosen a more substantial venue, or if Noah had a more established position. Like a doctor, my father added unnecessarily. We simply think it best if you do not bother us with this, my mother concluded. We have the hospital fundraiser gala that month as well, and your father is being honored for his pro bono legal work. Our social calendar is quite full. I sat there, teacup forgotten in my hands, as the full weight of their words sank in. My wedding was a bother, a trivial event, not worth their time, because I had chosen a life and partner that did not meet their standards of success. I see, I finally said, setting down the cup with a controlled motion that belied the trembling in my hands. Thank you for being honest. You always were so sensitive, my mother sighed. This is exactly why we worried about you making it as a photographer. Too emotional. I left their house that day with absolute clarity. For 3 decades I had been hoping for them to see me, to value me, to love me unconditionally, but they never would. I was a perpetual disappointment, because I had chosen fulfillment over status happiness, over their definition of success. In the car I called Noah and told him everything through tears. I will be your family now, he promised, and my parents already love you more than their actual children. It was true. Noah's parents, a retired librarian and high school science teacher, had welcomed me with open arms from our first meeting. They asked genuine questions about my photography, displayed my work in their home, and never once suggested that their son could have done better. I decided then that my wedding would proceed without my parents or sister. I would not spend another moment trying to earn the approval of people who fundamentally did not value what made me happy. June 12th arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe was compensating for my family's absence. Sunlight filtered through the garden trees, creating dappled patterns on the white chairs arranged in neat rows. Wildflowers in blue and purple, my favorite colors, lined the aisle and adorned the simple arch where Noah and I would exchange vows. In the small preparation room, I sat before the mirror as my friend Zoe, a professional makeup artist, worked on my face. She kept the look natural, knowing I preferred simplicity to glamour. My dress was vintage-inspired lace tea-length rather than floor-length, allowing me to move freely throughout the day. "How are you feeling?" Zoe asked, as she applied a light blush to my cheeks. "Mixed," I admitted. Happy about marrying Noah, sad about my parents, angry that I still care about their absence. "That is normal," she assured me. "Their loss, though. You look beautiful." Noah's mother knocked and entered with a small velvet box. "I thought you might want something borrowed," she said warmly. These were my grandmother's pearl earrings. I wore them at my wedding, too. As she helped me put them on, I fought back tears. This was what a mother should be on her child's wedding day. Present, supportive, loving. "Thank you, Linda," I said, hugging her carefully to avoid smudging my makeup. "This means so much to me." "We are so happy you are joining our family officially," she replied, "though you have been part of it since Noah first brought you home." My Aunt Karen and Uncle Jack had driven 6 hours to attend, and stepped in to fill the parental roles my own mother and father had abandoned. Uncle Jack walked me down the aisle, his arms steady and reassuring. Aunt Karen sat in the front row where my mother should have been beaming with genuine happiness for me. The ceremony was everything I had hoped for. Noah's vows made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Mine were more reserved, but no less heartfelt. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the small gathering of friends and chosen family erupted in cheers that seemed to fill the garden and my heart completely. During the reception, I noticed several guests taking photos with their phones, despite the professional photographers I had hired. Years of photographing weddings had taught me to hate this practice. Not only did it result in poor quality images, but it also meant people were experiencing the moment through screens rather than with their full presence. Yet today, I found I did not mind. These were people who truly cared about us wanting to capture memories in their own way. None of them were doing it for show or social media status. They genuinely wanted to remember this joyful day. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Noah found me sitting alone at a table, taking a moment to absorb everything. "Happy?" he asked, sliding into the chair beside me. "Completely," I answered truthfully, though I keep checking my phone. "For what?" I thought maybe they would at least send a text. Even just congratulations would have been something. Noah took my hand. "You know what? Let us make a pact right now. This is the last time today that we think about who was not here. From this moment on, we focus only on who was here and who will be here for all our days ahead." He was right, of course. I put my phone away and rejoined the celebration, dancing with our remaining guests until the venue staff began subtly cleaning up around us. Later that night in our hotel room, curiosity got the better of me. While Noah was in the shower, I checked my phone once more. No messages from my parents or sister, but several notifications from social media. Without thinking, I clicked on my mother's profile, which I rarely viewed these days. What I saw made my blood run cold. My mother had posted photos and videos throughout the day, not of an empty house missing a wedding, but of a beach in Hawaii. The timestamp on the first post was from 3 days earlier. There she was smiling broadly with my father, sister, brother-in-law, and niece and nephew on the shores of Maui. The caption read, "Perfect family vacation with the people who matter most." The photos continued through the day of my wedding. Breakfast on a hotel balcony overlooking the ocean. A guided tour of a pineapple plantation. Dinner at an exclusive beachfront restaurant where my father was shown raising a glass in a toast to family priorities. They had not just declined to attend my wedding, they had deliberately planned an alternative family gathering that excluded me entirely. The Hawaii trip would have been booked months in advance, meaning they had never intended to come to my wedding from the moment I announced it. I scrolled through comment after comment from their friends. "What a beautiful family. You all look so happy. The perfect grandparents with the perfect family." Not one person asked why they were in Hawaii during their younger daughter's wedding. When Noah emerged from the bathroom, he found me crying silently, the phone still clutched in my hand. Without a word, he sat beside me and looked at the screen. "Oh, Esther," he said softly, taking the phone and setting it aside. "I am so sorry." "They planned it," I managed to say through tears. "They planned a family vacation specifically during my wedding. It was not a conflict. It was a statement." Noah held me as I cried, soaking his t-shirt with tears on what should have been the happiest night of our lives. Once I had calmed down, I tried calling my mother. It was afternoon in Hawaii, and she answered on the third ring. "Esther, is something wrong?" she asked, sounds of laughter and ocean waves in the background. "I saw your Hawaii posts," I said, without preamble. "You planned a family vacation during my wedding." Yes, well, as we told you, we had prior commitments, she replied smoothly. Julia could only get certain dates off, and the children had activities to work around. You could have told me you were going to Hawaii instead of making it sound like separate conflicts. Would that have made a difference? She asked. The result would have been the same. We had more important obligations. More important. The words hung between us like a verdict. I was less important than a beach vacation. I need to go, my mother continued. Your father is waiting for me at the luau. I hope your little ceremony went well. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at the phone. Noah gently removed it from my grip and powered it off completely. No more tonight, he said firmly. Tomorrow we start our honeymoon and our life together. They do not get to ruin this for us. He was right. I had spent too many years letting my parents' disapproval shadow my happiness. Our honeymoon in Quebec was wonderful, filled with exploration, good food, and moments of pure joy captured both in photographs and in our hearts. For 2 weeks, I did not check social media or call my family. I existed fully in the present with the man who had chosen me above all others. 1 week after returning from our honeymoon, real life resumed. I had a backlog of wedding photos to edit and clients to meet. Noah was preparing for the new school year. We were settling into our newly shared apartment, merging our belongings and habits into a cohesive home. I was at an engagement photo session in the public garden when my phone began buzzing repeatedly in my bag. I ignored it until the shoot was complete, then checked to find 7 missed calls from my father and 3 voicemails. My father never called me, let alone multiple times in succession. The first voicemail was, "Terse Esther, call me immediately about the Madison property loan." The second, an hour later, was more urgent. "This is serious, Esther. The bank has been sending notices. Call me back." The third, just 20 minutes old, was openly panicked. "The loan payments have not been made. They are threatening legal action. Call me right away." My stomach dropped as I realized what this was about. 3 years earlier, when I was still desperate for my parents' approval, my father had asked me to co-sign a loan for a small commercial property he was investing in. The Madison building was supposed to be a sure thing, an office space in an up-and-coming area that would generate reliable rental income. "It is just a formality," he had assured me. "Your name on the paperwork helps with some tax advantages, but I will handle everything. All payments, all paperwork. You will not need to worry about a thing." Against my better judgment, I had signed. It was one of the few times my father had ever included me in any aspect of his business dealings, and I had been pathetically grateful for the recognition. Noah, whom I was just starting to date at the time, had gently suggested I get everything in writing, but I had been afraid that showing such distrust would close this rare door to paternal approval. Now, it seemed there was a problem. I finished packing my equipment and called my father from the park bench. Finally, he answered on the first ring. "Where have you been? This is an emergency." "I was working, Dad," I replied. "What is going on with the Madison loan?" "The management company I hired has been incompetent," he said, anger evident in his voice. "The building has been half empty for months, and they failed to inform me. The rental income has not been covering the loan payments." "But you have been making the payments anyway, right?" I asked already, knowing the answer from his panicked messages. "I was handling it, but with the Hawaii trip expenses and Julia's children's private school tuition that we help with, there were some temporary cash flow issues. I assumed the management company was still collecting enough rent to cover the minimum payments." "How many payments have been missed?" I asked my professional calm, masking the growing panic I felt. 3, he admitted. "The bank sent notices, but they were going to the building address, not our home. I only found out when a bank representative called me directly yesterday. 3 missed payments. My name on the loan documents. My credit score, which I had carefully built while establishing my business, was now undoubtedly damaged. The bank could come after either of us for the full amount, and given that my father was apparently having cash flow issues, they would likely target me. I need you to transfer $40,000 to cover the missed payments and penalties, my father continued, in the same authoritative tone he had used throughout my childhood. Once that is cleared, we can discuss restructuring the loan or possibly selling the property. $40,000, I repeated, stunned. Dad, I do not have that kind of money just sitting around. I just paid for a wedding and honeymoon. Surely your business has emergency funds, he pressed. This is a family emergency, Esther. Your credit is at stake, too. The irony was not lost on me. My wedding had been a trivial event not worth attending, but my financial resources were considered family property to be called upon in crisis. I need some time to figure this out, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I will call you tomorrow. This cannot wait, he insisted. The bank is threatening to begin foreclosure proceedings by the end of the week. Then it has already waited too long, I replied. I will call you tomorrow. I hung up and immediately called Noah, then our financial advisor, then a lawyer friend who specialized in real estate. The picture that emerged from these conversations was worse than I had initially thought. The property had been poorly managed for nearly a year. My father had missed not 3 but 5 payments, with the first 2 having been automatically covered by the reserve fund he had established at the beginning, which was now depleted. The bank was within its rights to demand immediate payment of the missed amounts plus penalties. If we did not comply, they could foreclose on the property and still come after both co-signers for any remaining balance if the sale did not cover the loan. Furthermore, my credit score had already dropped nearly 100 points, potentially affecting everything from our ability to refinance our mortgage to the interest rates on our credit cards. That night, Noah and I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by financial documents and legal papers. I cannot believe he let it get this bad before telling me, I said, rubbing my temples. And the timing. Right after they skipped our wedding for a luxury vacation that apparently contributed to their cash flow problems. It seems like more than coincidence, Noah agreed. The question is, what do we do now? We had options, none of them particularly good. We could liquidate a portion of my business savings to cover the missed payments, essentially rewarding my father's irresponsibility. We could try to force the sale of the property quickly, potentially at a loss. Or we could let it go to foreclosure, which would damage my credit for years, but might be financially better in the long run. I need to understand why this happened, I said finally. Before I decide anything, I want the full picture. The next morning, I met with our financial advisor again, this time armed with all the questions I should have asked 3 years ago. She helped me request a complete financial and occupancy history for the Madison property. What we discovered was troubling. The building had never been fully occupied. The sure thing investment had been struggling from the beginning, with my father constantly withdrawing any profit as soon as it accumulated, rather than building a proper reserve fund. The management company had indeed been sending reports, just not to the address my father had claimed. Most tellingly, my father had stopped making payments right around the time he would have been booking and paying for the Hawaii vacation. It looks like robbing Peter to pay Paul, my financial advisor said bluntly. Except in this case, you are Peter. I felt a cold clarity descend over me. This was not just financial mismanagement. This was my father prioritizing a luxury vacation with his real family over his legal and ethical obligations to a loan that could financially devastate me. When I called my father back that evening, I was calm and prepared. I have reviewed the Madison property financial records, I began. How did you access those? He interrupted, sounding alarmed. I am a cosigner on the loan, Dad. I have legal rights to that information. Why did you start missing payments exactly when you booked the Hawaii trip? That is entirely unrelated, he blustered, and irrelevant to the current situation. Have you arranged the transfer to cover the missed payments? No, I said simply. I have not. What do you mean, no? This affects your credit too, Esther. Be reasonable. I am being reasonable. In fact, I have consulted with financial and legal advisors to determine the most reasonable course of action. Which is he demanded. I will tell you tomorrow, I replied. I need one more day to finalize the details. We do not have time for your games, he snapped. This is serious. Yes, I agreed. It is serious. Just like my wedding was serious to me. I hung up before he could respond, then turned to Noah, who had been sitting beside me holding my hand throughout the call. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Absolutely, I nodded. For the first time in my life, I am going to treat my parents exactly the way they have treated me. The next 24 hours were a flurry of activity. I met with the lawyer again to understand exactly what my legal obligations and options were regarding the loan. I spoke with a credit repair specialist about mitigating the damage to my credit score. I consulted with a real estate agent about the actual market value of the Madison property versus what my father claimed it was worth. What emerged was a picture of my parents' finances that surprised me. Despite their upper-class lifestyle and apparent wealth, they were significantly overextended. The Madison property was just one of several investments that were underperforming. They had taken out a second mortgage on their home to help Julia buy her house. They were contributing substantially to my niece and nephew's private school tuition and extracurricular activities. And they maintained memberships at 2 exclusive clubs that cost thousands annually. In short, they were living beyond their means while projecting an image of success and financial stability. The Hawaii vacation had been charged to a credit card already near its limit. My father's law practice, while prestigious, had been losing clients to younger, more tech-savvy firms. My mother had recently reduced her hospital administration hours, but not her spending habits. They were not on the verge of bankruptcy, but they were far from the secure position they had always projected. And now they expected me, the daughter they had dismissed and devalued, to bail them out. Armed with this knowledge and a clear plan, I called my father exactly 24 hours after our last conversation. Finally, he answered, "Tell me you have the money ready to transfer." "I do not," I replied calmly. "Esther, this is no time for petty revenge because we missed your wedding. This is a financial emergency. Do not contact me about trivial matters," I said, using the exact words and dismissive tone my mother had used about my wedding. There was a moment of shocked silence on the other end of the line. "What did you just say?" he finally sputtered. "Trivial matters," I repeated. "Like loan payments, or foreclosures, or credit scores. They are trivial compared to the important things in life, would not you agree?" "This is outrageous," he exploded. "Your mother and I raised you better than this. We gave you everything." "Except your presence at my wedding," I countered. "Except your respect for my career. Except your unconditional love." "That is not fair," he protested. "We have always supported you. When it was convenient. When it matched your vision for me. When it did not conflict with Julia's recital or presentation or vacation. But when I needed you to simply show up on the most important day of my life, you chose Hawaii instead." "That is entirely different," he insisted. "Is it you decided my wedding was trivial? I have decided your financial emergency is equally trivial to me. "We will lose the property," he warned. "Your credit will be ruined." "I have already spoken to the bank," I informed him. "I have worked out an arrangement. Since I am a cosigner, not the primary borrower, I have options to protect myself that do not involve giving you $40,000. "What options?" he demanded. "That is not your concern," I replied. "Just as my wedding was not your concern." "You cannot do this to us," he said, his voice now holding a note of genuine fear. "Your mother will be devastated." "I imagine she will," I agreed. "Just as I was devastated seeing photos of all of you in Hawaii on my wedding day. The difference is that I did nothing to deserve that pain. You, on the other hand, made a series of irresponsible financial decisions while treating me like an afterthought." "We are your parents," he said, as if that single fact should override everything else. "Yes," I acknowledged. "And I have spent 30 years trying to earn your love and approval. I am done with that now. I will protect myself financially from your decisions, and I will no longer accept being treated as less valuable than my sister or a beach vacation." "You will regret this," he warned. "When you calm down and think rationally, you will see that family has to come first." "I completely agree," I said. "Family should come first. Remember that the next time you have to choose between a luau and your daughter's wedding." I ended the call and sat in the sudden silence of my living room. Noah, who had been beside me throughout, wrapped his arms around me. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. Lighter, I realized. Like I just put down something I have been carrying my whole life. The weight had been the constant effort to earn their approval, the persistent hope that someday they would value me as much as they valued Julia. Setting down that burden was both terrifying and liberating. The arrangement I had worked out with the bank was straightforward. I would not be contributing any money to catch up the missed payments. Instead, I had negotiated to have my name removed from the loan in exchange for a lien against my portion of any eventual inheritance from my parents. It was an unusual arrangement that the bank had initially resisted, but my lawyer had been persistent, and my excellent business credit history had helped. My father would now have to deal with the consequences of his financial decisions without using me as a safety net. The property would likely go into foreclosure unless he could find the money elsewhere. My credit would take a hit, but with the documentation of the situation and my proactive approach, the credit repair specialist believed we could mitigate much of the damage within a year. Most importantly, I had finally stood up for myself in a way my parents could not ignore or dismiss. I had valued myself when they would not. The fallout was swift and extensive. Within 24 hours of my conversation with my father, my phone began buzzing with messages from extended family members. Apparently, my parents had wasted no time in sharing their version of events. My Aunt Sophia, my mother's sister, sent a lengthy text expressing her disappointment in my abandonment of family in their time of need. My cousin Robert, who had always been close to Julia, left a voicemail suggesting I was being childish and vindictive. Even my grandmother, usually neutral in family conflicts, called to ask if I had really refused to help your poor father with a temporary financial setback. None of them mentioned the wedding. None of them acknowledged that my parents had chosen a vacation over one of the most significant days of my life. In the narrative they were spreading, I was the ungrateful daughter who had turned her back on family loyalty over petty grievances. Julia called 3 days after my conversation with my father. I almost declined the call, but decided it was better to hear what she had to say. "You need to fix this," she said without preamble. "Dad is a mess, and Mom has not stopped crying." "Hello to you too, Julia," I replied calmly. "How was Hawaii?" "Is that what this is about? You are punishing them because they missed your wedding." Grow up, Esther. Life is not all about you. The irony of this statement from the sister who had been the center of our family universe for 3 decades was not lost on me. This is about boundaries, I explained, and consequences. Dad made financial decisions that put my credit and financial future at risk without consulting me. Then he expected me to bail him out without question, right after demonstrating how little my major life events matter to any of you. We had planned that trip for months, she argued. The kids had activities they had to work around. My hospital schedule is incredibly rigid. And yet somehow, you all managed to coordinate for the Hawaii trip perfectly, just not for my wedding. That was different, she insisted. Yes, it was, I agreed. One was a vacation, the other was your only sister getting married. You know what your problem is, Esther. You have always been jealous of me. Of my success, my family, my relationship with Mom and Dad. This is just your way of getting attention. I do not want their attention anymore, Julia. I just want to be treated with basic respect, which apparently is too much to ask. Did you know Dad used the Hawaii trip money instead of making loan payments that my name is on? That he put my financial future at risk so you could all have Mai Taias on the beach? That is not what happened, she protested, though, with less certainty. Ask him, I suggested. Ask for the bank statements and payment records. See when the payments stopped and when the Hawaii trip was booked. There was silence on the other end of the line. Look, I continued more gently, I have never been jealous of you. I chose a different path that makes me happy. All I ever wanted was for them to respect that choice and show up for the important moments the way they always have for you. Is that really so unreasonable? I have to go, she said abruptly. The kids need dinner. We will talk about this later. But we did not talk about it later. Julia retreated into silence, neither defending me to our parents nor continuing to attack me directly. She had always avoided conflicts that did not directly benefit her, and this was no exception. Noah was my rock throughout the family drama. He never once suggested I reconcile for the sake of peace or give in to the mounting pressure. Instead, he helped me document everything carefully, preserving emails, text messages, and financial records that showed the true sequence of events. When I worried that I was being too harsh, he gently reminded me of all the years I had accepted their dismissive treatment. You are not cutting them off, he pointed out. You are just requiring the same respect you give them. That is healthy, not harsh. To my surprise, a few family members actually reached out in support once they heard my side of the story. My Aunt Karen, who had walked me down the aisle, called to tell me she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. Your mother has always played favorites, she said bluntly. I love my sister, but she has done you no favors by treating you as less than. It is about time someone called her on it. My cousin Danielle, who had distanced herself from family gatherings years ago for reasons I had never fully understood, sent me a simple text, "Welcome to the other side." It is lonely sometimes, but much healthier. Call me if you need to talk to someone who gets it. Even my Uncle Peter, my father's brother who rarely involved himself in family matters, emailed to say that while he took no sides in the conflict, he had always admired my independence and determination to build a life on my own terms. These unexpected allies helped balance the chorus of relatives, insisting I should forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. They reminded me that standing up for myself was not selfish or vindictive, but necessary and long overdue. Meanwhile, I threw myself into building my business and my marriage. The photography studio expanded, adding a third associate photographer, and moving to a larger space that included a small gallery to showcase our work. Noah received a promotion to lead teacher at his school, developing a new arts-integrated curriculum that his principal described as revolutionary. We renovated our apartment, creating a home that reflected both our personalities. We traveled when we could, taking weekend trips to nearby states and planning a larger journey to Europe for the following summer. We built friendships with other couples who supported our goals and celebrated our successes without competition or judgment. In short, we created the loving, supportive environment I had never experienced growing up. Our home became a place where achievements were celebrated, regardless of field, where setbacks were met with encouragement rather than criticism, and where love was never conditional on meeting someone else's standards. 6 months after the confrontation with my father, I received a formal letter from the bank confirming that my name had been removed from the Madison property loan as per our agreement. The property had not gone into foreclosure after all. Somehow my father had found the funds to catch up the payments, though he never told me how. I suspected he may have borrowed from friends or liquidated other investments rather than face the social embarrassment of a foreclosure. My credit score was recovering slowly but steadily. The credit repair specialist had helped me document the situation in ways that mitigated some of the damage, and my otherwise excellent financial history worked in my favor. It would take another year to fully recover, but the worst of the impact was behind me. Most importantly, I was healing emotionally. The therapist I had started seeing after the wedding helped me work through the complex grief of essentially losing my family of origin while building my family of choice. She helped me see that my parents' inability to value me was their limitation, not a reflection of my worth. "You cannot make someone love you the way you need to be loved," she told me in one particularly powerful session, "but you can stop accepting less than you deserve." It was a painful lesson, but a necessary one. For the first time in my life, I was defining my worth on my own terms, rather than through my parents' narrow lens of achievement and status. 1 year after our wedding, Noah surprised me with a weekend getaway to celebrate our anniversary. He chose a charming bed and breakfast in a coastal town, knowing my love of ocean photography. The innkeeper had set up our room with champagne and flowers, and Noah had arranged for us to have a private dinner on the beach at sunset. As we toasted our first year of marriage, I realized how much had changed in 12 months, not just externally with the business expansion and home renovations, but internally. I was calmer, more confident, less driven by the need to prove myself. "What are you thinking about?" Noah asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "How different I feel now compared to last year," I replied. "Like I have finally stopped running. Running. Running to catch up, to be good enough, to earn approval that was never going to come no matter how fast or far I ran." He squeezed my hand. "You were always enough. I am just glad you can see it now too." My relationship with my parents had settled into a new pattern. After months of either angry messages or complete silence, my mother had reached out around the holidays with a carefully neutral email asking about our plans for Christmas. I had responded politely but firmly that we would be spending the holiday with Noah's family. Since then, we had established what my therapist called civil distance. Occasional emails or brief phone calls that remained on safe topics like the weather or general news. No discussions of my business successes or their financial situation. No mentions of Julia or her family. It was superficial but manageable, a relationship built on mutual politeness rather than authentic connection. I had accepted that this was likely all we would ever have. My parents were too set in their values and perceptions to truly change, and I was no longer willing to contort myself to fit their expectations. The distance between us was the natural consequence of 30 years of conditional love meeting its first real boundary. What surprised me was how much peace I found in this acceptance. The constant ache of seeking approval had been replaced by the quiet confidence of knowing my own worth. I still had moments of sadness about what might have been, but they no longer overwhelmed me or defined my days. My business continued to thrive, with a growing reputation for capturing authentic moments rather than posed perfection. A prestigious wedding magazine had featured my work in their spring issue, calling my style revolutionary in its emotional honesty. The feature had brought in a wave of new clients, allowing me to raise my rates and be more selective about the weddings I accepted. Noah and I had started discussing children, a conversation that brought both excitement and anxiety. I worried about repeating patterns, about somehow transmitting the conditional love I had experienced to a child of my own. "But you are not your mother," my therapist reminded me when I shared these fears. "You have done the work to recognize those patterns. That awareness alone is a powerful preventative." She was right, of course. The very fact that I worried about repeating my parents' mistakes meant I was unlikely to do so unconsciously. Noah and I were building our relationship and potential future family on a foundation of acceptance and support rather than expectation and comparison. In March, just as we were seriously considering starting a family, my Uncle Jack passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. His funeral was the first time I would see my parents and sister face to face since the confrontation over the loan. I considered not attending, but Uncle Jack had been one of the few family members who had consistently shown up for me. He deserved to be honored, regardless of my discomfort with the family dynamics his funeral would entail. Noah and I flew to Chicago for the service, booking a hotel, rather than staying with relatives to maintain some emotional distance. The funeral was well attended, a testament to my uncle's wide circle of friends and positive impact on his community. My parents arrived just before the service began, looking older than I remembered. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and my mother seemed to have lost weight. They nodded stiffly in my direction, but made no move to approach. Julia and her family sat with them in the front row, while Noah and I chose seats several rows back with my Aunt Karen. After the service, during the reception at my aunt's house, I was helping arrange food in the kitchen when my mother entered. We stood awkwardly for a moment before she spoke. "Your photography business seems to be doing well," she said. "I saw the magazine feature." I was surprised she knew about it. "Yes, it has been a good year professionally." "Your father and I are selling the house," she continued, rearranging cookies on a tray unnecessarily. "It is too big for just the two of us now." I am sorry to hear that, I said, unsure what response she wanted. We found a nice condo closer to Julia's family. Smaller, but adequate for our needs. I nodded, recognizing the financial reality behind the downsizing but choosing not to comment on it. "The Madison property sold last month," she added. "Not for what your father had hoped, but enough to clear the loan." "I am glad it worked out," I said sincerely. While I had stood my ground about not bailing them out, I had never wished for their financial ruin. We lapsed into silence again, the weight of all that remained unsaid hanging between us. Finally, my mother straightened her shoulders in the familiar way that signaled she had made a decision. "Your father and I may have been hasty in our assessment of your wedding," she said carefully. "We regret missing it." It was not quite an apology, more an acknowledgement that their actions might have been questionable. From my mother, it was significant nonetheless. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means something to hear it." Another pause, then she added, "Noah seems like a good man." "The best," I confirmed. "He makes me very happy." She nodded once decisively, then picked up the tray of cookies. I should get these out to the guests. It was a small exchange, barely 5 minutes of conversation, but it represented the first crack in the wall between us. Not reconciliation, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of a more honest relationship. One built on who we actually were, rather than who she had always wanted me to be. 2 months after the funeral, I discovered I was pregnant. Noah was ecstatic, spinning me around our living room when I showed him the positive test. We agreed to wait until the first trimester was complete before sharing the news widely. But the prospect of becoming parents filled our home with a new energy and purpose. When it came time to tell our families, we invited Noah's parents over for dinner and shared the news in person, resulting in happy tears and immediate offers of babysitting and nursery furniture. For my parents, I chose a simple phone call, bracing myself for a lukewarm response. To my surprise, my mother actually gasped with what sounded like genuine pleasure. "A baby, oh Esther! That is wonderful news. When are you due?" "December 15th, I told her, just before Christmas." "Your first Christmas as parents," she said, a wistfulness in her voice I had rarely heard. "It will be magical." We talked for nearly 30 minutes longer than any conversation we had shared in over a year. She asked practical questions about my health and prenatal care, but also more emotional ones about how I was feeling about becoming a mother. For once, she seemed to be truly listening to my answers, rather than formulating her next point. As we were about to hang up, she hesitated, then said, "Your father and I would like to visit after the baby comes. If that would be all right with you and Noah." It was an unexpected olive branch, one that both touched and terrified me. The thought of my parents in my home holding my child brought up a complex mix of hope and anxiety. "Let us plan for that once the baby arrives," I said carefully. "I am not sure what those first few weeks will be like." "Of course," she agreed quickly. "Just let us know when you are ready. We can wait." The last 3 words struck me forcefully. We can wait. Had my parents ever waited for anything related to me before? Had they ever adjusted their expectations or schedules to accommodate my needs rather than demanding I accommodate theirs? It was a small thing, but it suggested a shift, however, slight in our dynamic. As my pregnancy progressed, I found myself reflecting deeply on my own childhood and the kind of parent I wanted to be. I journaled extensively, processing memories and feelings with an intensity that sometimes surprised me. My therapist helped me distinguish between the patterns I wanted to break and the values I wanted to maintain, between legitimate fears and catastrophic thinking. One entry I wrote during my 7th month particularly captured my journey. "I used to think love was something you earned through achievement, appearance, or compliance. That belief shaped every relationship in my life until Noah showed me that real love is about being seen and accepted exactly as you are. My child will never have to earn my love. They will have it from their first breath, regardless of their talents, choices, or path in life. They will know with absolute certainty that while I may not always understand them, I will always, always love them. That is my promise and my healing." The day our daughter Lily was born was the most transformative of my life. The moment they placed her in my arms, tiny and perfect, with a head of dark hair, I understood love in a way I never had before. It was instantaneous, unconditional, and overwhelming in its intensity. I would have done anything, given anything, to protect and nurture this miraculous being who had somehow emerged from our love. Noah was a natural father, confident and gentle as he cradled Lily against his chest. His parents visited the hospital that first day, bringing tiny handmade booties and tears of joy. My Aunt Karen and cousin Danielle came the next day with practical gifts and offers of help once we got home. My parents waited, as promised. 2 weeks after Lily's birth, when we had established something resembling a routine and I felt ready for more visitors, I called to invite them to meet their granddaughter. They arrived bearing gifts that showed more thought than I had expected. A beautiful, handcrafted wooden music box that played a lullaby, a collection of classic children's books. A tiny silver bracelet that my mother explained had been hers as a baby. "It should stay in the family," she said, as she handed me the small velvet box. "For your daughter now." Watching my father hold Lily with uncharacteristic tenderness, I saw a side of him I had never witnessed before. His usual stiff formality melted away as he gently rocked her, murmuring nonsense words when she fussed. "She has your eyes," my mother observed, hovering nearby. "The same shape." "Noah thinks she has my stubborn chin too," I replied with a smile. "That will serve her well," my father said, unexpectedly. "Determination is a valuable trait." It was perhaps the first time he had ever framed my stubbornness as a positive quality rather than a character flaw to be corrected. I met his eyes over Lily's head and saw something new there. Not quite approval, but recognition. Acknowledgement of who I was rather than disappointment in who I was not. Our relationship remained complex and sometimes strained. Old patterns did not disappear overnight, and there were still moments of tension and misunderstanding. But Lily created a bridge between us, a common ground of love that transcended past hurts. I set clear boundaries about their involvement, establishing from the beginning that while they were welcome in Lily's life, Noah and I would make all parenting decisions. To my surprise, they largely respected these boundaries, perhaps understanding that their access to their granddaughter depended on respecting her parents. 2 years have passed since that confrontation over the loan. My business continues to thrive. My marriage grows stronger each day, and my daughter fills our home with joy and wonder. My relationship with my parents is neither perfect nor completely healed, but it is more honest than it has ever been. I no longer seek their approval or measure my worth through their eyes. I have built a life defined by love rather than achievement, by connection rather than competition. It turns out that standing up for yourself is not just about the moment of confrontation, but about the life you create afterward on your own terms and according to your own values. If my story teaches anything, it is that your worth is inherent, not earned. That healthy relationships require mutual respect, not one-sided accommodation. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say no to those who cannot see your value. And that trivial events like weddings and loan payments often reveal the most profound truths about who truly matters in our lives and how we should allow ourselves to be treated. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who did not value you or your choices? What helped you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too deserve respect and unconditional love. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes the family we create is more nurturing than the one we were born into.